Hello, and welcome to the Vibrant MD podcast, where we talk about weight loss, women's health, and food. I'm Dr. Heather Awad, your host, and you may even be seeing this on YouTube. So today I am thrilled to have as a guest Dr. Amanda Adkins. She is an internal medicine doctor and lifestyle medicine doctor, both in a clinic and online. And we're going to talk whole foods, plant-based eating style today. So welcome, Dr. Adkins.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Great. Well, tell people a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so like I said, I am Dr. Amanda Adkins, board certified in both lifestyle and internal medicine. Lifestyle medicine is just recent, but it's actually called me because I've been looking for something like this for the past few decades, just with my own health. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I practice mostly outpatient medicine, and then, like I said, do some online health coaching, where I am the owner and CEO of Enlightenment Health and Wealth, and we help women who are overweight prevent and reverse chronic illnesses. And something I love to do is hiking, which I can't wait to do tomorrow.
Nice. Where are you going to hike tomorrow?
In Moraga. It's not too far from where I live. I'm a part of a hiking group here. So most people ask me, where do we hike? And I said, I don't know. Wherever they go, I just click the link and I just show up. So, like, the easy thing to do.
Yeah, well, that sounds super fun. I love it.
Yes.
So thank you for coming again. And why don't we just start out with you explaining what is a whole foods plant-based eating style?
Yes. So whole foods, that is the key. It's foods that you recognize without a label. That's the easiest way I can explain it for people. So if you have to go and try to look and say, what exactly is this? It's probably not a whole food. That's a generalization, but that's usually the easiest way to look at it. So if you're eating plant-based, and that's, things that come from a garden, your fruits and vegetables, whole grains. It also includes nuts and seeds. Some people also add oils. Some people are more strict and they don't add oils. But you can kind of do it either way, kind of depending on where you are as far as your own diagnoses and own health journey. But you want to make sure that you get in, like the rainbow of colors, which is very important for whole food plant-based eating patterns. So a lot of people wonder, what will meals look like if I only eat plants? And tell them there's hundreds of different types of, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains that you can try. And I'm betting, I usually tell them, I bet that you have not tried them all in different eating styles. So don't count it out just because you hear this on this podcast now, like, oh, I don't want to eat that way. Give it a chance. You never know.
I love that. I love that you said to eat the rainbow too, because I think, we get a little bit obsessed over the past 2 decades on the superfoods. And I actually gave up eating zucchini for a while because I was like, it's not a superfood. I'm going to eat superfoods. And it's silly because, like, all of those vegetables have their own little thing, right? Depending on what color they are.
Yes. They all have their own superpower. Like sometimes I think with when you have those types of terms, it's very good for marketing. So people are like, oh, I'm just going to have that. And, then people really push that. And then the price of those foods go higher, if you notice. So I just tell people, because sometimes that's also what turns people away, is because they think it's cost too much to go whole food plant-based or eat healthy. So I, tell them that's not the case. You can eat what's, like I said, in the regular grocery store. You can find so many different fruits and vegetables that are different colors and sizes. And then just cook them in different ways. So they all have a good amount of nutrients in there. So yeah, eat the rainbow.
Awesome. So some people wonder when they hear this, because it's got a long title, like, what's the difference between whole food plant-based and like vegan or vegetarian?
Yes, I get this question a lot, and I love it because I actually gone through these different stages. So I started out when I was 16 as a vegetarian. And people ask me why I did that. I have no idea. It was just something that I was like, I'm going to try this. I was overweight as a teen, so I wanted to see what I can do to try to lose weight. So in our cabinet I think it was a can of peas and a can of corn. And so that's why I was like, it can be very inexpensive to go that way. So I just tried that. So being vegetarian, you still eat animal-based products. So you can still eat meat, eggs, cheese, things like that. So it's still some type of animal-based products. As a vegan, you don't eat any type of animal-based products. People even include honey in that. So no meats of any kind, no eggs, nothing, fish, nothing. Like, because sometimes people said, oh yeah, I'm vegetarian or vegan and not have fish. And I'm like, that's not the definition of that. But
Right.
it's none of those. And some people that actually take veganism to more of a heart is actually animal rights based. And so therefore their clothes are, things that they may invest in, and they actually look to make sure that animal rights is very big, and so they don't have like leather and things like that. So that's another aspect of veganism, is not just food. Also, for vegans compared to whole food plant-based, is that they can eat a lot of processed foods. So you may see that in the stores. And we already talked about how marketing is, of how they may say, oh, this is plant-based, but you still kind of have to read the label to see what it is. And we've already said what whole foods is, that you won't have to actually read the label, right? So again, that's kind of a marketing term. So when you look at that, so the studies that actually help people the most in their health is more for whole foods. So that's why we really try to put that label on their whole food plant-based. And when I explain that, I always like to put on the disclaimers, like, I am not, I would say 100% perfect all the time. So I do eat processed foods. I will eat cake. I will eat plant-based ice cream, all that kind of stuff. So even though I'm explaining this, I always like people to know that I am not 100% whole food plant-based all the time, but majority of the time I am. But in those, like my birthday's coming up, so I'll be having cake and ice cream. It will be vegan, no animal products, but it still is sugar. But that's the biggest difference. So you go from having and some animal-based products to no animal-based products with some animal rights in there, where you're eating processed foods, and then you go to where you're not eating any processed foods at all.
Great. That's really helpful. And I love that you say that you don't have to be perfection with this, because I think people worry about that. Like, if I'm going to commit to this, then I can never have cake, on my
Yes.
birthday, or they think my life will be misery. And there's all these beautiful recipes, like you said.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be perfection.
Right.
And
I think that makes it, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that's more realistic for people, because like I said, sometimes they feel overwhelmed when they're going through this journey, and they're like, oh my gosh, if I take one meal and eat the other way, then I might as well just continue on that path. I'm like, no, you eat that one meal that's off, and then you get right back the next meal. So I always just like to encourage people with that, because anytime you move in the right direction, you're going to actually reap some health benefits.
Right. And that's really the push for whole food plant-based, is for the health benefits, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Because we do have lots of good data on reduction in many diseases by eating that way. So things that people worry about, or actually, why don't you tell us about a few of the diseases that are helped by this kind of eating style?
Yes. So heart disease is very big, because as we know, heart disease is #1 killer in the US. So there's been a lot of studies dating back decades that actually shows that a whole food plant-based diet can actually reverse some heart disease. And that's even for some people that have severe heart disease, to where they have needed a cabbage, or I should say a coronary artery bypass, or heart surgery, or even stents, to where they have to open up the heart arteries. And actually changing to a whole food plant-based diet. And this is where the studies that some of the cardiologists have done is where they take out the oil also, because oil is fat and it can still irritate the arterial lining. And so if you're at that end of the spectrum, usually they really try to push to where you don't eat oil, or if you do, it's a very minimum amount, like you could hardly even see it and stuff. And that's where you would actually see some of the biggest benefits of reversing your heart disease. Another big one is diabetes, which I love to work with people that have diabetes, because it's especially type 2 diabetes. I should actually specify that. And it actually can reverse type 2 diabetes also, so because that is a big part of nutrition, what we're eating, that actually puts us at risk for type 2 diabetes. A lot of people think that their genetics plays the biggest role, but actually your genetics plays a small role. You have those genes there, and whether you decide to turn them on or turn them off actually depends on your lifestyle. Again, this is why I love lifestyle medicine, because you can take so much control over what illnesses may actually come about. And different types of cancers have actually been shown to be prevented with whole food plant-based eating. Colorectal cancer is a very big one. Also, prostate cancer, breast cancer. There's studies done with that actually can help not only to prevent it, but actually if you were diagnosed with these cancers, it can actually help prevent it from getting worse, and actually help you to go into remission. So I tell people it's never too late. You can always make a change, and yeah, so many different things. So I'm excited to see other studies that may come out. I know there's one study in the works looking at dementia, which is going to be huge if it actually can show proven benefits. But I think it will, because it's a vascular issue, and you just think that
Sure.
heart disease, things like that we have already shown some changes, that we'll definitely see some differences there. So I'm always hopeful, and hearing this, sometimes other people actually get hope also, because they think, oh well, my mom and dad had a heart attack and diabetes, so I know eventually I'll get it. And I just tell them, no, that's not the case. You don't have to do that. Stop it.
Yeah, it's beautiful to have that hope, and to, like you said, to know that you can do something. And
Yes,
I want to
yes.
just ask specifically about diabetes too, because a lot of clients I work with have had that, one blood sugar test that's off, and they're concerned. And do those folks also need to watch fats on a whole food plant-based, or can they have olive oil and nuts and those things? Avocado.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. They should also watch their fats, because it actually shows that most people think it's carbohydrates they have to stay away from, right, when they're
Mhm.
diabetic. But actually it looks like the precursor to that is saturated fat. So the fat has blocked, your cells, and it's not accepting its own insulin. And therefore, when you eat carbohydrates, it can actually get that sugar broken down and into the cells. So you think that because of the carbohydrates, you're having an issue. But if you actually get rid of that fat, that saturated fat that's building up in those cells, then those carbohydrates can be digested very good. And so I actually recently had a client that we're talking about that, because she was like, oh, I didn't see my numbers change as much as I thought. And I was like, well, tell me about what you're eating and how you're preparing that. And she was using a lot of olive oil. And I was like, okay, let's cut that and see how things go.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So you definitely have to be careful with that. So the oils can be used if you're trying to prevent, but if you're trying to reverse, you're probably wanting to cut out those oils and extra fats. So you want to be more on a low fat, whole food, plant-based eating
Okay.
style.
Great. Thank you for talking about that. One of the questions that all doctors get when people are eating a plant-based diet of any sort is, can I get enough protein if I only eat plants? So if you could address that, please.
I love this question too. And every time people bring that up, I was like, dang, I should have worn my shirt that said, keep calm, plants have protein. I have a shirt that says that. So, yes, when I saw that, I said, oh, I have to have that. So it's actually, I would say, goes back to marketing also. You think back when I was younger in the 80s and things like that, where you all of a sudden think, when you think protein, you think meat. And that's not the case. Like, you shouldn't always just put that together, but that's just how we were programmed to think that meat is protein. Meat is protein, mostly protein, but it's also fat and cholesterol, right? So
Mhm.
we want to look at it from that standpoint. Okay, yes, you can get a lot of protein, but do you need that much protein? We're not protein deficient in the US. Of course, there's third world countries that have that, but in the US,
Sure.
that's not the case. And you can get plenty of protein on a whole food plant-based diet. Most of the time you only need between, up to 10% of your calories actually coming from protein. And that's on the higher side. And if we think about the health benefits versus the risk, the more protein that's in your diet, there's been some studies that show that increases your risk for cancers. So you don't necessarily want a higher protein diet, even if you're trying to build muscle mass and things like that. One thing when I was studying actually with lifestyle medicine is that they pointed out is that if we think of the perfect food for humans, what would that be? And it's actually the human breast milk, because that's when you are growing the most, right? You are infant and you're doubling in size, you're growing. And breast milk only has 5 to 6% of its calories as protein.
Wow.
So if you think about that, that was eye-opening to me too. I'm like, oh my goodness. So why am I trying to, bust myself to get 30% of protein in a diet, which I've never was able to do, like I said, since I was being a vegetarian since the age of 16. So I was like, oh, wow, that was so liberating for me. So sometimes when I explain that to people, they're like, oh, okay, that makes me feel better. But again, you can still get plenty of protein in a plant-based diet. So your legumes, your lentils, beans, tofu, tempeh, soybeans, that's what tempeh is, for people that didn't know, because I didn't know what it was initially. So I always like to explain that. So you can get plenty of protein in those foods. Also in, your vegetables, there's protein. If you actually went calorie for calorie, between spinach and steak, if you had as many calories from spinach as you do in your steak, you actually get more protein in the spinach.
Whoa. So, wait, you gotta stop there. Calorie per calorie, more protein in spinach than steak. Wow.
Yes, okay. Yes. So I know I can't remember my exact numbers, but I had this where I was actually have it for people. So like say there's 300 calories in a steak, like a 4-ounce steak. And let me tell your listeners, this is not the exact numbers. I'm just giving an example, but this is like what it lines up to be. And then you may have 15 cups of spinach or something like that. So it still would be like 200 something calories of spinach. So if you actually look at that and look at the amount of protein that's in the steak, that's 200 something calories versus the amount of protein that's in 200 something calories of spinach, you get more protein in spinach. So people can actually calculate that out and see. So you're not going to be protein deficient in a whole food plant-based diet. And you don't have to do the meat substitutes or anything like that to get them either. Again, that's more marketing, where that's just pulling people over to be healthier. Some think that those foods are healthier. It has different aspects of nutrition, to where also, again, animal rights and planet, the carbon and all that kind of stuff, that it can actually help. So they're trying to push people that way, but you don't necessarily have to have that. You can get it from those whole foods. So I like I said, I love that. And when people do that, I just like, oh yes, we're getting rid of that myth today.
Yeah, so good. And really, I know that people and women, need, when they get older, need to pay a little bit more attention to make sure they're getting enough protein, like 65, older than that. But really, a lot of people wouldn't have to pay attention at all or worry at all. Just eat whole food plant-based and they will get enough protein. Is that fair to say?
That is right. And again, we have to go back to eating the rainbow. So you'll eat a variety of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. And then also to point out, like people ask about protein, but then their diet is like eating hamburgers and French fries all day. So where's your other nutrients that you're supposed to get, all your vitamins, all your minerals? So you're like, I got to get off my soapbox with that. Like when people ask that, like, you're going to be deficient and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, but you're deficient too. So like, where are we fighting about here? So we're just trying to be the healthiest that we can. So let's just look at that. So I love that. That's my argument.
So let's talk weight loss too. Whole food plant-based is one of the many wonderful ways to lose weight, including for people over 50. So
that is
a little
right.
bit more about that.
Yes, and I actually came to this, like I said, my story started with me trying to lose weight myself. And I found it the easiest to keep weight off by following a whole food plant-based diet because one, you get lots of nutrients, you can eat a lot of food, and it's still not that many calories. So, like I said, you had to eat like I said, like 15 cups of spinach. Like somebody would get tired of chewing before before they reach a high amount of calories from those things. So if you actually follow that, the weight comes down and people can actually become to a more of a normal body mass index, or what we would say. But people are very surprised of how easily the weight comes off, and they don't feel like they're deprived either. So some people
Right.
like, oh, I have to, measure this. I have to actually put this on the scale and I do this. And then I'm still hungry at night. So I go to the, refrigerator and grab something, at 10 o'clock at night before I go to bed. And that's not the case. You actually feel full because you're eating a lot of food. You're eating the nutrients that your body needs. And so your cells are satisfied and you don't have that hunger. Now, of course, if we have other emotional things that go on, then that can
Sure.
contribute to eating later. But for the most part, for people that don't have that, then they actually can lose weight and lose weight easily.
Nice. Now, if someone wanted to take a step towards whole food plant-based, but they don't want to go all in next week, what would you suggest?
So I always recommend that people start by adding in fruits and vegetables to every single meal, because
Nice.
most of the time we don't do that, right? We don't have fruits and vegetables at every meal. So if you start just doing that, that actually will push you towards that whole food plant-based eating style. And then the next step after you do that would be to make fruits and vegetables and whole grains the center of your plate, and then the meat as a side dish. Because right now we have it the opposite. With meat, we think, oh, what's the main meat we're eating? And then we'll do things around that, right? But then
Right.
we put the plants in first and then the meat on the side. And then eventually you just push the meat off your plate. And then you're to the whole food plant-based.
Nice. Nice. I like to tell people to explore some vegetarian recipes, some whole food plant-based recipes, because there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yes. And like I said, people are surprised on how good things taste. And it's just, herbs and spices. And it was one documentary that talks about whole food plant-based eating, and that how they're like, well, what do you do to make your, your meat and your fish and your chicken and all that stuff taste good? You add on plants, right? To make them taste good. So hey, you might as well just eat the plants. So then you'll be great. But yeah, with all the different spices that are out there, I'm amazed at how good, plant-based food has come. Because like I said, when I started back in the 90s, I grew up in Indiana. No type of vegetarian food, was out at the time. So I tell people I've come a long way from a Big Mac with no meat to now eating, a black bean burger that actually has black beans in there. So so it definitely can come, and you can get delicious food. And I am thankful that I live in the Bay Area, because it's so many vegetarian, vegan, and plant-based restaurants around that you can just try so many things and get ideas.
Nice.
And you don't have to be a chef. Like I said, I don't like to cook, but I can put together a few things quickly that I learned, and it'll be a complete meal. So
Nice. I wish I had written this down, but I will put it in the show notes. I watched the documentary, Arnold Schwarzenegger Eats a Whole Food Plant-Based Diet.
yes,
A lot of these really high level, like strongman competition people.
Game changers. Is it
Game
game changers?
changers. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. So if you're thinking, I'm an athlete, I exercise a lot, I don't know if this would be for me, it's on Netflix. Game
Yes.
Changers. It's a terrific documentary and just fun to watch these really high level athletes eat
And
this.
and the key to that is eating enough calories. It's not necessarily eating more protein, but just eating enough
Mhm.
calories to build the bulk. So that's what they talk about there. And like I said, if you get the actual nutrients that you need, your body will actually reward you. And then you just do lots of reps to build those muscles.
That's right. That's right. But I get athletes who say, oh, I'm not sure that I could still play tennis and eat that
Mhm.
way. And And it turns out
Yes.
you can.
Yes, and that's a great documentary to watch. They actually premiered that at one of the conferences that I went to. And then there's also a book that I actually have right here. It's called The Plant-Based Athlete, which is by Matt Frazier and Robert Cheek, that actually talk about how to be plant-based. And they go through like different eating styles to follow. Like that's how I know like the calorie intake and, you know, different athletes from, you know, like you said, tennis players, Olympic athletes, cyclists, bodybuilders, you know, weightlifters, all those are in that book. So if you have athletes that are looking at that, that's a great book to look at. So
Thank you. Thank you. That's awesome.
Yes.
I also do not eat whole food. Well, I do not eat whole food plant-based, but I eat some vegetarian meals during the week. And I'm so glad that we're talking today, because I have been thinking about how I want to make another step toward more whole foods plant-based. So I just want people to know that really you can take one step,
Yes.
you know, you can take 4 steps, you can do it all, but it's definitely worth it because it's really good for your health. And like you said, it's honestly one of the easiest ways to lose weight without having to pay attention if you like this style of eating. So
Yes. Yes. And like I said, that freed me up so much, because I was a calorie counter and I was like, oh my gosh, like 1,200 calories, I'm still hungry. What am I to do? Because that's what it told me I had to eat to lose weight. And it was, like I said, it's just so liberating to actually be able to eat and know that if you eat along that style, like your weight will go down. And then once you hit your weight, I mean, it will stabilize. So
yes. And this does work for women over 50. So
yes.
definitely good. So tell everyone, please, where they can find you if they want to hear more of what you have to say or want to work with you.
Yeah, so you can actually find me on my website, and it's www.dramandamd.com. Also have a YouTube channel, Facebook and Instagram, where it's just Dr. Amanda Adkins. So I made it easy so you can find me anywhere.
Great. And I'll make sure we have those links in the notes as well. So thanks again for coming today. I appreciate you talking to my audience.
Thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Terrific. All right, everyone, this is Dr. Heather Awad, and I want you to know that we are open for enrollment in weight loss for professional women over age 50. The best way to do this is actually find me anywhere on social media. I am currently on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Heather Awad, MD. You spell the last name AWAD. Send me a direct message and we will talk and find out if this would be a useful program for you, because I only want to work with people who are ready to get big results. And so I look forward to talking to you. Thanks and have a great day.